This is coming from NBC News. I rarely bring you well-done articles by NBC News. And there's a certain part of the aspect of this that's well done, which is the research into families living in long-term motels. The part of it, which I'll mention probably several times throughout this, is that the part of it that sucks, that's mainstream media being mainstream media, is they will never dig deeper. This article does not at all dig deeper, other than, boy, rough economy, rents have gone up, end of story, right? Can't dig any deeper than that. Across the country, there are indications that a growing number of Americans have been turning to budget motels for shelter. I mean, this is fucking survival. In one of the richest countries in the goddamn world, this is just survival. This is people trying to survive. And it's step one of a government. If they're worth $2, they should give you housing. They should make sure that their people are not living on the streets. But the United States cannot do that and will not do that on any level. On any level. They're just interested in how they can exploit you, how they can suck out your money, suck out your labor, suck out your life force, suck out your time, suck out your effort. That is all they concern themselves with. And the people who don't have enough money to pay the exorbitant rents, well, they're just collateral damage. Well, why? Why should we help them at all? Doesn't matter. Anyway, across this country, the indication, a growing number of Americans have been turning to budget motels for shelter after a surge in rents and home prices. Why? In recent years, left those on the lower end of the income spectrum with no place else to go. While motels can provide a warm place to sleep and an element of security, it's a form of housing with high costs and low quality of living that can set individuals on a financial spiral nearly impossible for some to break out of. And something else I'll probably mention more than once here is these are not people without jobs. I mean, I'm not saying none of them are jobless, but a lot of the people living in long-term motels to try and survive, to try and have shelter, have jobs. These are the working poor in America, which is an increasing number of Americans. Full-time jobs, can't afford a rent. Sometimes it's two parents with full-time jobs. A survey by Transforming Lives of Motel Residents, well, that's a weirdly phrased sentence. Transforming Lives of Motel Residents in Fort Worth, Texas area found that a majority of those living in motels were single mothers, and about a third of children were under age 6. In some cases, multiple families were sharing a room. So a lot of single mothers just trying to get by, and again, or almost exclusively working mothers. A third of the families surveyed had been living in motels for more than 6 months, paying as much as $1,400 a month, which sounds like about the cost of a rent, $1,400 a month. But the rents have gotten so crazy in most places in this country that $1,400 a month is not necessarily a rent. Last year, government housing programs gave out more than double the number of hotel and motel vouchers they did in 2020, though the numbers were down slightly from 2022. The education department recorded 107,000 primary and secondary public school age students living in hotels or motels during 2021, 2022. A 20% increase from the year before living in hotels. Well, those are the ones that were recorded, but a lot of people, either because they don't file the paperwork or they're ashamed or there's a myriad reasons, they could also be undocumented, but myriad reasons, that it's obviously way above 107,000. Those are the ones that they know for sure. And that's just the children. So that's not even people that don't have their children with them. Maybe their children living with another parent. Maybe they don't have children, but this doesn't count all of the people living in long-term motels and hotels because they can't find shelter. It doesn't count the ones without kids. They say oftentimes people will go to hotels or motels or double up or triple up with other family members, but for many, those are just temporary solutions on the road towards homelessness. For many, staying in a long-term motel is just one step as things keep getting worse. This is Adam Bosch, CEO of Hudson Valley, Pattern for Progress. So this is in the Hudson Valley. Families in this region have been booted out of the backside of the housing market that has sprinted away from them faster than they can keep up. These are now working households living in hotels on public assistance. They are grocery store workers. They're certified nurse assistants. They're childcare workers. They're restaurant servers and cooks. They're people making $16 to $20 an hour who typically in this region would have been able to find a modest rent somewhere, but now those modest rents are gone. These are people with fucking jobs. In many cases, these people are earning $16 and $20 an hour and still can't afford a rent. Also, because food prices have just become astronomical. So if you want if you have 2 kids and you want them to eat anything other than the mac and cheese out of the box, food costs can just be crazy. Keep in mind, supposedly one of the richest countries in the world. Also, we can print all the dollars we want, and if the American government and the oligarchs decided to, they could print out whatever amount of money they needed to help give all of these people shelter that isn't a goddamn motel. They could do that tomorrow. There'd be no real large impact on our monetary supply or anything else. Continue for the article. With buying a home increasingly out of reach, more families are continuing to rent, putting added pressure on the rental market. The average rents in Ulster County have risen 28% since 2020, 28% since 2020 to around $1,500 a month. And you know something else they don't mention throughout this entire article, in-depth article about housing and everything else? They don't mention that there's 17 million vacant homes across the country. That doesn't even count rental properties. They don't mention that these vacant homes are mainly being hoarded by the rich, who view them as a safe place to sink money because they know that the dollar depreciates over time. But if you own property and houses, those usually don't depreciate over time. So they don't mention that this is being caused by the rich in so many different ways. After 6 months at the shelter and still unable to find an apartment, the family moved into, her last name is Krajewski, in with Krajewski's mother, where they lived for a year and a half, but eventually that couldn't last. They don't give the details, but I would imagine eventually that couldn't last was probably her mom going, "Get the fuck, I'm sick of you living on that," which is everyone's family. If you live with anyone for over a year and a half that didn't want you there initially, it always ends that way. So then they split up the family to try and afford, and these are the like downstream ramifications of this garbage economic system of a ruling elite that don't give a shit about you. The downstream ramifications, people's lives are destroyed, families are separated, divorces happen, people lose their kids, and of course kids get terrible educations because they're getting moved around and their lives it just ripples down the stream. So they split up the family to try and find a way to afford it. Krajewski's husband moved in with her mother, and their teenage son joined them. So he took one kid over his mother's. Krajewski and her daughters, the 2 girls, were placed in a motel by the county. But when they say placed in a motel by the county, that means the county covers some of the cost, because even a cheap motel would be $3,000 a month if it's not, some of the cost isn't covered by the county. So they got it down to like whatever, $1,400 or $1,000 a month or something. Krajewski is among the more than 150 homeless adults and children living in one Kingston motel. One motel. There's 150 homeless people that have been placed there by the county. Tipped over tricycles and small bikes lay on the motel's parking lot. Strollers are parked outside of rooms, and children loiter on the jungle gym swing set in the motel's courtyard. There are so many children living at the motel that the school buses regularly stop there, and local organizations have put together after-school programs to keep the kids occupied. The motels of America are becoming like towns, like societies, like a microcosm. This motel is our town. We live in this motel. Utterly insane. Local governments are only able to use emergency housing funds for temporary shelter. So in our stupid, dumb, idiotic, greed-based government, the local governments are only allowed to use emergency housing funds, which should be to help people. They can only use that in temporary shelter. So therefore, they put all the people in temporary shelter when they should be in long-term shelter. So they put them in fucking motels to use the temporary funds. Emergency funds. It's so stupid. While the federal government does offer housing vouchers to help lower income families pay for rent, there are lengthy wait lists for those vouchers because the demand exceeds the amount of funding available. And something else that you will not see mentioned in this article, you will probably never see mentioned on your mainstream media, is, I know I talk a lot about the insane amount of money we dump into military, but let's just remember that this type of funding is discretionary funding by Congress to put into the housing authority and stuff like that. Over 55% of the discretionary funding by Congress goes to the Pentagon. Over half of all money, discretionary money, dispensed by Congress is to war and death and destruction. It is to rain down bombs on children in Gaza. That is over half of the discretionary money dumped out by Congress. Meanwhile, people in America can't get a roof over their head. But we're sending missiles to Ukraine. It's so ugly and disgusting. I think we're moving towards a society where, like, community's the new currency. Like, money is bullshit, and if you have community, then that is wealth. And, you know, there's so many, speaking of community, there's so many aspects of this that, of course, I can't get into every aspect of how stupid this is and how insane it is and how greed-based it is. But another one of those aspects, if you dig down a little deeper, is the way community has been destroyed in our country. You are separated carefully. I mean, we've been separated pretty carefully as an effort to make sure we're not living in groups. We're not grouping together, organizing each other. We're not organizing as workers. That is by design in a large way. Those who do group together will be usually intentionally torn apart, if not torn apart by the kind of gravitational force of capitalism, various aspects of it. But when you are separated and atomized the way we are in our society, then when terrible things happen, when emergencies happen, you don't have that community to fall back on. You can't turn to the community and say, we need help. There is no community. Instead, you're in a long-term motel. These are many of the, I've tried to get to some of the aspects of the deeper aspects of this concept of this article here that, of course, they would never cover in your mainstream media. And even this article is just a rare moment that, like, NBC News or something even discusses the unbelievable poverty in this country, which is supposedly one of the richest in the world. The median family income in the U.S. has gone from $10,000 a year in 1971 to $55,000 today. You're making 5.5 times as much as you did back in 1971. Of course, the dollar has a different meaning, though, and that's what he goes on to basically say. The median cost of a car has gone from $4,000 to $48,000. That's an increase of 12 times. So while the income has gone up by 5 times, the cost of a car has gone up by 12 times. The median cost of a house has gone from $25,000 in 1971 to $357,000, an increase of 14 times as much. Income's gone up 5 times. The median cost of an Ivy League college has gone from $3,000 a year to $87,000 a year, an increase of 29 times, while the median family income has gone up 5.5 times. The average cost of healthcare per person has gone from $400 a year to $15,000 a year, increase of 37 times as much since 1971. So this is how you can have such a large increase of people in terms of income. Like, our incomes have gone up a lot, yet it's crushing to try and survive in this economy like this because everything else has gone up far more than our incomes. So that's another explanation for how you end up with people living in goddamn motels.